Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui in Beijing. China's housing market seems to be reviving. After a slump in 2014, overall housing prices and sales ticked slightly upward, registering just over a 4% increase last year. But investment is still sluggish, and the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences has predicted that domestic home prices are likely to suffer a cliff-like drop in the second half of this year. How will China's property market perform in 2016? What is the key to addressing China's housing supply glut? And is there a real estate bubble waiting to cause trouble? To discuss these and other questions, today I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Mr. Mo Tianjuan, Chairman of Sufang Holdings Limited. But before we get started, let's look at this background report.
Strong demand in first-tier cities is behind the rebound of property prices. Despite the recent price increase, many residents of Beijing still believe that property prices in central locations will continue to go up.
I'm not sure about the China as a whole, but I think prices will continue to go up in Beijing because people from all over the country move to Beijing. Now that China is loosening the hukou policies, I think Beijing will attract more people. So I think property prices in Beijing, especially in central locations, will continue to go up.
I think demand is still there for real estate. The earlier you buy, the more room for appreciation. I will probably buy within 2 years.
But analysts say that China's property market still faces strong headwinds in 2016, especially in the lower-tier cities due to oversupply. They expect transaction volume to shrink slightly due to mismatch in supply and demand, as well as high base numbers from 2015.
We think the total transaction volume could be still down like 0 to 5% year on year. The reason being, as what we just mentioned, the recovery is not across the board. It's just mostly concentrating on Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities. But, Tier 1 cities, the supply side, they may decline as well.
In addition to internal demand, foreign investment into China's property market remains strong. China is the third most popular property investment destination in the Asia-Pacific region behind Japan and Australia, according to CBRE research. Foreign investment is also shifting focus to Tier 1 cities.
The money coming to China is very, very different compared to the past. Traditionally, people coming to China ask for the higher return, higher risks. So therefore, a lot of opportunistic capital coming to China in the past. But going forward, we are expecting to see a lot of core investors, institutional investors. They are coming to China, but they are going to focus on Tier 1 cities.
Chen adds that government restrictions have suppressed demand in first-tier cities. Hence, there's plenty of room for policy loosening to increase demand. The volatile equity markets in China and limited investment options also give investors no better choice to park their money.
Welcome to Dialogue, Mr. Mo. After the figures show that overall housing prices and sales ticked upward in 2015 after a slump in 2014, will the momentum continue?
Actually, it is continuing, and I have the January numbers here. And from China Index Academy, they published China's 100 cities housing prices. And in January, comparing to January last year, the price is up 4.37%, and sequentially, it's up 0.42%. So actually, the trend is continuing from 2015 to at least to January of 2016.
You mean the momentum will be maintained and the recovery is well underway?
I think so. That's my understanding of the market. From our indices, from our data, from our fund.com and the research center, I think the major cities, first tier, second tier provincial cities, they're going to keep on going up, and especially Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, these cities. Last year, Shenzhen grew almost 50%, and in January, it's 45%. So the momentum is still going up. 45% and 50%, it's extraordinarily high. It's not normal. So the upgoing trend in the big cities is still going up. But we need to divide China's property market into several markets at least. First tier cities, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, they're in a very good situation. And those second-tier provincial capitals, and they're also in a little bit longer run, the trend is also going to be very promising. But for those third-tier or fourth-tier cities, because the installment is very high, it's going to take some time for the third or fourth-tier cities to absorb those existing installments.
You mean there are a lot of inventories in the third and fourth-tier cities?
Exactly, because of the inventory and the price in the third and fourth cities,
but
it's going down.
I'm afraid that's going to be a nightmare for the local governments, which count so heavily on land revenues.
It is a nightmare now, and actually from the central government to local governments, they've been trying to, kind of destock or destock inventory in those third and the fourth tier cities. And the central government even have a special team, to deal with this challenge.
One convincing solution, if any, to the supply glut in the third and the fourth tier cities would be, of course, reduction in the housing prices. Will that happen?
In the third and fourth tier cities, the price has been going down. Actually, in 2015, the trend will be continue. We're continuing into 2016. So,
but I'm afraid there is a popular assumption here for in the case of the third and fourth tier cities, local government officials, I'm afraid, are the stakeholders in the real estate market themselves. They cannot afford to have a too sharp a decline in the prices because that will increase the local debts, and they are not going to have any financial vehicles to pay to cover the debts.
You're perfectly right, and local government, especially third and fourth tier governments, they rely on so-called land to get the budget filled, but to some point you cannot manipulate the market anymore. So now it's the point, the inventory is really a headache for both the local government and the central government. So the decrease of housing price in those third and fourth tier cities, especially those third and fourth tier cities with a high volume of inventory, it's inevitable. Then the price is decreasing, and it's going to continue decreasing, and the government, local governments, they can no longer rely on the auction of the land to meet their budget needs.
I'm afraid another major aspect concerning the consequences arising from the supply glut is the bankruptcy of some of the small and medium-sized real estate developers. I mean, what do you think of the issue of bankruptcy for those who can hardly survive the debts?
I don't think it's going to be single digit, probably double digit or even higher digit, over smaller developers with single project in those third or fourth tier cities. They may go bankruptcy, and because no sales, and prices going down. So they borrowed a lot from the financial institutions. Even if they can sell, still they need to pay the interest. So they're still not going to make money. So that is a very big challenge actually to those developers. But we have, in China, we have over 30,000 developers in China. So I think double-digit, bankruptcy is still normal. But the problem is that if those developers, they are not going to survive, they are not going to behave anymore, they're going to affect the local government. They are not going to buy land. They are not going to pay land anymore. So that's going to affect the local governments.
There's a strong possibility that hundreds of small and medium-sized real estate developers might go bankrupt due to the heavy debts. Ironically, heavyweight players such as Vanke generated a lot of headlines towards the end of last year because of the legal case between Baoneng and this biggest real estate developer in the Chinese market. Baoneng, a very promising new company based in Shenzhen, wants to have the principal share of Vanke, but was rejected by Mr. Wang Shi, founding president of this company. He said the reputation of Vanke is problematic. But why do you think Vanke is so attractive and has maintained such a strong competitive edge despite the general pessimistic scenario?
This is a normal, business practice or business experience, business case, Vanke is the top developer in China, and it's not only top in China, it's also top in the whole world with respect to residential development. And Vanke and the management has been very strong, very professional. And Vanke itself, its financial numbers has been strong as well, revenue, profit. So Baolen is more kind of an investor. Investors they look for good companies. So Vanke is a good company, so very natural for Baolen to invest heavily into Vanke. But the challenge is that Baolen invested too much. Baolen becomes the biggest shareholder of Vanke, so which may affect the operation of Vanke. So that's the management needed by Wang Shi has been concerning about. But I think fundamentally it's a business case, and Vanke is going to attract more good investors, to be their shareholders.
We've been living in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen for years, and many of us have bought their second and third homes. They expect and they want to invest more because our options for investment are quite limited. We have to either enter into the stock market, which experienced, unfortunately, a free fall last year. The intervention by the government caused a lot of debates outside China. Having said this, what do you think of the prospects of our sustainable investment in this real estate market in the first and second tier cities? Will we have any sharp decline in the prices?
Frankly, I'm very confident with the property market in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. We have seen this trend even in 2015 and to January 2016, and we've been seeing the price is going up, and I expect it's going to continue going up into the whole year of 2016. Most of the big cities. There's several reasons, and one is that because we are, the big cities are attracting more and more people, and especially talented people, into the cities, and they need a place to stay. It's very natural with the population growing, and definitely it's going to boost the property market. And another minor, not immediate effect is the second child policy. And the second child policy, we're going to see in the coming 5 years or a little bit longer, and the demand for the second bedroom or third bedroom will increase, which is going to boost
I'm afraid
the market as well.
Overestimated the scenario, because many young couples refuse to have a second child despite the relaxation of the policy because of the heavy living costs. They cannot afford to cover the education fees in the first and second tier cities. Don't you think so? And also there's another chronic issue, which is the supply shortage. The land supply is is a big problem. There won't be enough land supply for Beijing and Shanghai.
You're right. If the land is in short supply, and it's going to drive up the price again. So other than the second child policy, and people are trying to buy bigger houses and big apartments, and those smaller ones, they're going to. The newcomers to the city is going to take the smaller apartments. And the third reason, I think it's still the, people are still believing in property market, especially with the stock market has been so volatile in the past 1 year. And the people, they are going to put more money into the property market. I think that's also one reason. And other than that, the whole policy, from central government to most of the local big cities, they're promoting property market. They're supporting this key sector of China's general economy. So with the tax easing and other policies as well. So I believe, at least for 2016, those big cities are still going to have a very healthy, normal growth. The challenge here, which may affect the price of the big cities, is really general economy. If our general economy is going to suffer heavily, and this is going to come back to the property market, which is also going to follow the general economy, and which is going to suffer, which may lead to the decrease of the property prices in big cities.
Thank you very much. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Mo Jinquan, founding chairman of the Sufang Limited Holding. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. Welcome back. What about the monetary easing policies? Many monetary easing policies have been rolled out in recent years to stimulate the demand and the supply. Will that create new dynamics?
I think the monetary easing policy and including property market or property industry easing policy, it's all based on the general economy and of course relates to the property market as well. We have been seeing China's GDP growth has been going down, in the past couple of years, and 2016 is and I think it will be a very challenging year from the top central government, local government to enterprises like we are running. So the monetary easing policy is definitely going to be there to support the turnaround or recover of the or to boost the general economy, including the stock market and our GDP growth, and as well as the property market. But I think this needs to be careful. We did this about 5 years ago with 4 trillion or even more money. So currently the central government has been doing this with a very good monitoring of the supply side. So to make sure we're going to spend money, we're going to have a better policy, but it's going to support those industries which are going to have a future.
Due to the oversupply and overcapacity of our construction boom in infrastructure, including in real estate market, we see a contradiction here, which may have dampened the passion of those home buyers, particularly the first home buyers. First, we need to stimulate the growth, and that means you either rely on the domestic consumption, which is currently the major policy instrument. On the other hand, you have to reduce the reserve ratio requirements so that there will be more liquidity for the investment in fixed assets. But I'm afraid for the second choice, it's quite limited, given the fact that we have had enough of the overcapacity and oversupply. And therefore, what about the purchasing power of the middle-class families?
Actually, the numbers showed that last year, the new market has been growing, although the growth rate is going down. And the resale market has also been growing very fast, especially in Beijing and Shanghai. Resale market for the property even doubled last year. So we have not seen the liquidity problem in the property market yet. But going forward, if more and more people they're going to have more and more apartments, and which may create a liquidity problem, because of just so big or so many supply. So we need to be careful. That's in the big city, in the biggest cities like Beijing and Shanghai, the limitation to buy policy is still there. Mm-hmm. It's only for those 30 provincial capital cities, mm-hmm. and most of them has dropped this limitation to buy. So I think that's why I just said the government, the central government to local government, they have been becoming clever to handle this demand issue and also to handle this supply side issue.
Right. We've been talking about the young couples and the middle-income families, and most of them are in their 30s and 40s. But what about their parents? Now, we're talking about the young white-collar workers who might be the product of the one-child policy over the past 3 decades. And now they are the backbone of their individual companies and industries. So they want to pay back what they owe to their parents. They want to bring their parents to the first-tier cities like Shanghai and Beijing. So will that increase the transactions of these first and second-hand properties? What about the increase in the sales of nursing homes for the elderly, the pensioners and the retirees? Because this promises to be a very dynamic industry, right? A lucrative industry for the real estate economy.
Well, the answer directly is definitely sure, yes.
Sure.
We need to, there are 2 little things there. One is that we talked about the second child policy. In China, there's a tradition. The grandpas, grandmas, they're going to take care of the grandsons, granddaughters, mm-hmm. right? And with that policy easing, and more people, they're going to have a second child. And because of second child, and the parents, the grandparents will move probably from small town or rural areas to the big cities, and which is going to increase the the demand, for properties, both because of the population is increasing. Your second question about the elder housing, right? So this is going to take some time. With the second child policy, with the people, grandparents moving into the cities after the kids, grow after 5 years, 10 years, and those grandparents that have been living in the cities, they are familiar to the cities. They may not want to go back to their original, place. So the big cities and surrounding big cities, there will be a big demand. Big demand for the elder housing.
Many middle-class families are in fact the owners of multiple properties. So housing rental business might be flourishing, and it could be a very lucrative business. So what can you tell us about this part of the market, housing rentals?
Actually, we have a section about rental market, so we can have some very detailed understanding of this market. In the big cities, still, big cities always the winner, and the rental has been increasing every year in the past several years. So even during the bad years for the transaction, sale and buy, bad times. So still in the big cities, still the population is increasing, and more people moving into the big cities. They cannot afford to buy at the beginning, so renter is the only choice for them. So we have been seeing the big cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou has been increasing. So it's my judgment. I think in the foreseeable future, the big cities rental market is still going to be very good, and the price will keep on moving up.
It has a lot to do with one's living style. Instead of buying your own fixed assets or properties, many young people may choose to just rent a house, and so that they could enjoy more of the flexibility. But Mr. Mo, urbanization might be a powerful tool to digest the housing overcapacity. China is speeding up the urbanization drive and rolled out the National New Type Urbanization Plan, which is supposed to help 100 million permanent urban residents obtain an urban hukou. We are talking about the migrant workers, and most of them come from the underdeveloped rural areas. With the improvement of their hukou prospects, meaning they could be registered as the former residents in urban areas, will that increase the demand?
The answer is definitely yes. So the social change, especially with the policies from the central government, is definitely going to change the structure of the city population. So more and more people, hukou is really something, a restriction thing, which is very special inside within China.
Were it not for the coercive policy initiatives or ruling by decree from higher authorities, I'm afraid local government officials would be very reluctant to accept migrant workers, because that would definitely increase pressure on the environment and on the quality of the local, quality of lifestyles of locals, right?
That's one side, but we need to look at the shining side, the colorful
the bright side.
Yeah. So people, it has been. I always believe, people, especially talented people, they are the most important, factor in boosting the economy and boosting everything, in this social development. So with those good things there, I think every city, every country, we need good people. If we have good people, it's going to boost everything. It's going to push forward everything. So although, of course, even, think about the immigration things in the European countries. People are debating about it. But one way is that, think about Germany. 1 million new labor into Germany. That is a very productive factor. So which is a good thing, which is a resource, added to Germany. But of course, those
yes,
immigrants...
the old part of European countries is getting very old and very fast. Getting older, so new labor force from war-torn countries like Syria and Iraq will be, of course, very welcome in theory. But don't underestimate the implications of a rebound for the far-right movement. They reject,
exactly.
The immigration.
So that's the side effect.
They want to close the free borders.
Yeah. So in China, I think in the big cities, hukou is still restricted. Like in Beijing, it's very tough, for outsiders to get into Beijing as a citizen or to get a Beijing hukou. But in more and more cities, I believe eventually in Beijing and Shanghai, and the hukou is also going to be open to all talented people. It's
Well,
good
for-
to the cities.
Exactly. Preferential policies would, of course, be adopted to attract professional, talented people from inside the country and from outside, right? Those who have got very good degrees from European and American universities, they are, of course, welcome to be involved in the high-tech industry. Mr. Mo, to make homes affordable to lower-income workers, China has also started a massive public housing program. Some argue that while the program is riddled with problems ranging from phony reporting to substandard construction, it appears to have put a flaw under the real estate market. Do you agree?
One way it is a fact, it is true. But on the other hand, I think the affordable housing, it has two effects there. One is that it's really increased. Actually, it's something good things, welfare things for those needed people. I think it's the government responsibility for people to have a place to stay. On the other hand, affordable housing, it's really something like a way of to increase the demand of the economy. It's a way to boost the economy, especially when the economy is in a downturn situation. So thinking about those two effects, I think affordable housing is still a good way to do.
Do you think, Mr. Mo, the levying property tax is the right direction to keep housing prices in check?
Frankly, I don't. In the longer run, I think property tax is it's a thing we need to do. The government needs to do. But in the short period of time, in China's economy, the tax system is very complicated. We are a very heavily taxed country, individually or company as
Even
well.
compared with OECD countries?
Exactly, we are on the top of the list. So
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, in the short period of time, that's why we need to put this property tax into the whole tax system. If we don't reform the whole tax system, if we only talking about the property tax, I think it's going to cause lots of trouble, even social trouble, among all the ordinary families. So we need to be very careful with that.
Fortunately, the silent majority have not demanded what will be the return of their commitment to the taxation policy, what the taxpayers would enjoy in return for their silent commitment. The last question, I'm afraid, is some economists estimate the housing and related industries account for more than 20% of the Chinese gross domestic product. The ills in the housing market are highly interconnected with the slowdown in the Chinese economic growth, both cause and effect. Do you see a real estate bubble? If so, do you think the Chinese economy is on the edge of dangerous, if not what we call the free fall cliff drop?
Frankly, I partially agree with this concern, and because we have been under big pressure currently, we have multiple troubles, not only one, stock market, and the slowing down of the general economy, and property market, has been in trouble with other than the big cities. And thinking about the politics, the military actions from the U.S. in the South China Sea, all of these areas. So I think China, we are under big pressure, from multiple aspects. So back to the property market, if the general economy it slows down and jobs continues dropping at a faster speed, it's definitely going to affect the property market. But I believe, the central government, that they are going to have multiple ways, multiple tools to make sure the economy, general economy, including the stock market and the property market, in a normal and a good situation.
Thank you for your note of being cautiously optimistic about the property market and about the general scenario of the Chinese economic performance in the year 2016 and even beyond. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue with Mr. Mo Tianquan. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.